Effectively, we're a community of over 1,000 of the most influential and innovative founders across London, Berlin, and New York. And we were really built with the knowledge that actually, no matter what a founder's background or experience, they just couldn't be an expert in every aspect of their own business. So for us, our core mission has been, well, actually, how do we create that community that truly is? So no matter how niche their problem is, there's someone in the network that can really help them there. So our sort of secret sauce to that and the way we work is once a quarter or so we host a form of mentoring. So we go out to everyone in the network and say, well, what are your real challenges today? What's stopping you scaling today? And then our team spends time to then pair them with another founder in the network that we know has the experience to really guide them through that. And that format was born out of lockdown, but has been a real winner on a couple of fronts. So one, the founders love it. They get straight to their pain point. They can adapt their business the next day based on the advice they're given. But actually, for us, what it does is it gives us a real-time insight into what the challenges are. So that means we can really tailor the program, whether it be roundtables, workshops, pitch nights, whatever it may be. It allows us to work with some of the biggest companies in the world who has the knowledge and the technology to really help the founders and really guide them on best practice and latest learnings. So I think for all of us, I think we've all got that key interest in SMEs. And I think as exciting as that space is, actually comes with a real responsibility as well. I think we need to make sure we're doing it in an authentic and an impactful way. And part of that is growing that trust, and we have to do it pretty quickly with the SMEs, as we all know they move ridiculously quickly. So I think it was the end of last year we started putting these sessions on where we bring together just small groups like this of people that work in the SME space to really share challenges, advice on what we find really works in this space. To be honest, it's become a bit of a vent and a therapy session more than anything, but it seems to work well. So just before we kick off, it'd be great to get to know who's in the room. So it'd be good if we can go around and quickly introduce ourselves, what company we're with, and if that needs a 1 or 2 line explanation, then go for it. But I think just to bring some context to the session, it'd be good to know who is a startup or a scale-up that you really admire, either from a business standpoint, maybe you're a personal customer. So I'll go first. I'm James, I run the Founded Network. One of the businesses I came across literally last week, we had a meeting with a company called Trax in Berlin. They are, I'm going to try to explain this in a non-techie way, mainly because I don't understand the techie version. Effectively, you know when you're watching car racing or F1, whatever it may be, the cars draft off each other, right? Where they pick up speed by getting right behind each other so they don't have that resistance. They do that for trucks that are going over long distances, so whether it be across Europe or across the States, they use GPS and pair them if they're going in the same direction at the same time so they can meet up. And the fuel costs are just ridiculous over long distances. So what it does is it pairs them and splits the cost, but then it also gives the company a CO2 rating as well, so there's that benefit. Hello, how are you? Come on in. So yeah, that's one for me where, again, an area I've just never thought of, but such an innovative brand. So that'd be mine. So I'll go to my left. Sorry, that's going to massively put you on the spot. Coming in, Rebecca.
No, I'm going now. So I'm Zoe Cuthbertson. My role is Head of Marketing for Savings for Aldermore Bank. This is obviously my colleague, who I will let introduce herself. So I think most people would have heard of Aldermore in some context, but we, in terms of the savings business, we are a challenger bank, digital only, and are really focused on providing really strong rates for SMEs. We think the high street often can almost have forgotten them. And we're really focused on changing that, providing really seamless, easy proposition with really, really good rates. In terms of a small business that I admire, we have recently been working with the Federation of Small Businesses on their awards, and we sponsored the Family Business Award, and it was amazing to meet the family businesses, because obviously a family business is a completely different kind of business to your sort of standard SME. And we met a business called Platt's Agriculture, and what really impressed me about them is the innovation and the sort of willingness to get stuck into something that most people wouldn't go anywhere near. So they started out as farmers, and they have now made a £7 million business with a royal warrant out of sawdust. I know. So they provide bedding for sort of animals, so livestock, and apparently it's really difficult to get a quality product. They started that business up, they've taken it up to 7 million.
Incredible.
Which is absolutely outstanding.
They won, did they?
They won, they did.
Okay,
They won
good.
our family business for the UK. But yeah, and the passion of that group over something that most people would overlook, just outstanding.
Yeah. Amazing. Rebecca, no pressure.
So I'm Rebecca Collins, I work with Zoe. I'm head of marketing for the business finance area. So that means looking after asset finance, invoice finance, commercial mortgages and property development. And we work with small to medium to large businesses. I don't know the question, but so was there
a small business to admire,
so
either personally as a
I carry on with
customer.
Aldermore. So our challenge primarily is is awareness, because the go-to finance for a lot of SMEs is loans and overdrafts or personal credit cards. So my job in marketing is to sort of raise awareness of different specialist finance. In terms of, I can't just pick one, to be honest. A big part of my job is doing case studies and interviewing businesses all the time, and the challenges that they've gone through and then surfaced and come through COVID have been amazing. So Secure Shield, they started their business at the start of lockdown, and the challenges they've had with supply chain and furloughing staff and things like that I can think of is another one. Electric vehicles, a guy who started from an apprenticeship and has built his business on innovation. He now does electric waste vehicles for different boroughs, and he's looking at hydrogen as well and new technology to try and reach net zero. So that's a big thing that we're talking about a lot with our customers as well. So I can't pick one.
Amazing. I should say dig in, there is so much food.
It's a bit overwhelming.
Oh, you got 2 meals, yeah.
Everyone take 2 or 3 meals and we should be fine. Connie, over to you.
Hi. Hi everyone, I'm Connie, Constance, and I work for JCDecaux. So it's out-of-home media owner. You know, in London you see we own the bus stops and large, all the key stations, etc. But we run specifically a startup scale-up program for brands of all industries really. So it's really working with a lot of fintechs or brands who want to reach SMEs, but also kind of working with a lot of obviously direct-to-consumer, FMCG, really broad who we work with. And who do we... 2 brands I think at the moment that I really love. One is Superscript, who we've been working with for quite a while, for a year and a half. But I think, they're B2B insurance for SMEs, insurance for SMEs. But I think they've been really bold to not do the typical SME B2B marketing, but really reach out and do some out of home, and it's working really well for them in that space. And another one maybe is at the moment, just a recent campaign that I really loved was Fertility. It's essentially a female kind of fertility testing brand, but again, I think in terms of speaking about branding and kind of building that emotional connection with the audience, their branding was just super powerful, and their campaign was not selling a product, it was really making that emotional connection with women. So it's a great example.
Nice. Hi, I'm Daisy. I work for Impact.com. Impact's a partnership automation platform, so we offer our customers the opportunity to build a partner network to promote their brand, and we really define partner, could be anything, could be influencers, could be another brand, it could be ambassadors. So one of our kind of biggest success stories was Revolut coming on board as a challenger bank. What they did was they made all of their key customers into ambassadors, and we were able to provide them with the technology to be able to track those relationships from first engagement all the way through to a new customer coming on board for their bank. In terms of a brand that I admire, actually it's quite a sad one. So there was a jewellery brand called Motley, and really what they were doing was they were championing individual designers. They were really trying to bring some ethics into the design side of the jewellery business. So not just into the raw materials, but also in terms of really recognising the creativity and the individual kind of aspect of each of the contributors to their brand. rather than just kind of amalgamating everything under their label. And unfortunately they just closed, and the reason being was that they weren't able to justify externally the prices that they were charging, and they found that they weren't able to really access any reseller agreements, and they really struggled to kind of bring enough awareness to these individual designers. So it just wasn't profitable for those designers to sell their jewellery through Motley. But I think it's really important to learn from failures as well, and to kind of look and identify how any kind of businesses could have assisted them to achieve their goal, and how they could have been better supported.
I'm Thomas. I'm a UK director at Clearco. For those that aren't familiar, Clearco is a Canadian-based, revenue-based financing company. So, as I'm sure many will be aware, there's been this explosion, I think, over the last 2 years of these types of companies. Essentially, what we're doing is providing non-dilutive, and that's the key word here, non-dilutive growth capital to primarily e-commerce founders. So to date, we've funded over 7,000 founders. I've been in the business for a year. We've been operating across a number of European markets for around that time, funded more than 1,000 founders. In terms of a company that I admire, we're not working with them, but the work that WageStream are doing, I think, is highly impressive. So, again, if not familiar, essentially, they're enabling employees to be able to draw on their salary sooner. They've partnered with a number of leading institutions like the National Health Service, but everything I'm hearing about that company, culture and product is really encouraging. So certainly one which I think has been very impressive to see the rise of. It's UK based, and I think looking to try and scale globally. So good luck to them.
Hi, I'm Natasha. I'm also from the Founding Network. I work on our partnerships across all of Europe, as we've recently expanded to Berlin now, as well as the UK. My favourite SME at the moment, I mean, it's not as inspirational as everyone else's, it's more for my own. It just makes life easier. I think that's what a lot of brands are looking to do. It's a company called I Hate Ironing. So they are
already sounds like one.
Already, absolute winner. And I do hate ironing, so it really resonated with me as a consumer. But they essentially, it's a dry cleaning service. They do sort of lastminute.com panic kind of moments where you're just like, you need an outfit for the next morning. They're there, very personable, and we've recently been doing a series of events with a company called Twilio. And we've spoken a lot about, really building relationships through communications, and making sure that you touch base and build trust with your customers. And I found that every interaction with them has actually been a real delight, and so that's why I keep going back. Not that I have many outfits that do need ironing, because just need to sort of nip it in the bud. But yeah, that's my one.
So hello everyone, my name is Stephanie. And I work for Lucid. I'm the marketing director for Northern Europe and Australia. And I've been at the company for nearly 4 years. And do I need to say what Lucid does? Generally, no, right. Spoiler. And so it's not really this. It used to be a startup 2 years ago, but we started working with Bolt. I know you guys, everyone knows Bolt. So quite brave to try to crack the London markets that was already quite saturated. And a company I admire from East London, they're called the Trampery. I don't know if you've heard about them. So they fund independent fashion designers, and they make sure that they have affordable studios to establish their business. So they're quite present in East London in Hackney Wick, just starting. So they do everything they can so that these guys have a presence on social and a store. So they're quite cool.
I'm Allie. I work for Twitter. I'm American. I was in our New York office for 8 years and then moved here to focus on more global and then small business work in the past year. So I've been focused on a lot of Israeli fintech startups lately, learning a lot. And yeah, we're expanding that focus because there's some news about Twitter right now, and so we're kind of relooking at where to prioritize and how we can be efficient. So I think there's going to be more focus on small businesses because of the opportunity there. And one of my favorite small businesses, I don't actually know how small they are, but Riverford Farm, the fruit and veg boxes. I don't know if it's just because I'm a foreigner, but having like dirty vegetables delivered by a farmer to my front door is just so magical. And I just think they tell a really great brand story. They give you a cookbook when you sign up. So that's nice.
That is cool. Isabella, would you like to intro yourself?
Hi, I'm so sorry, mate. I work at a fintech called Equals Money, and we work with SMEs, mainly. We provide current accounts, company cards, international payments, bulk payments, and yeah, I think it's a really underserved market, and big companies served well by the banks. So yeah, really happy to be here. And my favourite small company at the moment is Being London. So they're a client of ours, and we're just on a campaign with them. So I'm head of growth and work in marketing, customer acquisition, and they make kind of sustainable bags, but they're really amazing. So look them up.
What's your name?
It's Being BEEN, and their founder is amazing. So worth supporting.
Cool. Well, as you can see, quite a range of businesses around the table, but I think we all share that passion of actually really supporting these scale-ups. And I think it's really about not how we start that client relationship, but actually how do we become a true growth partner with them. And I'm glad we're discussing this today because I think a big part of it is that trust element. How do we gain authentic trust? And we need to do it relatively quickly. One of the big learnings that's come out of the Founding Network is actually no matter how big a scale-up becomes, it's almost like they never believe they can afford to advertise on TV or work with the biggest law firms or whatever it may be. And as we know, so many of us are sort of killing ourselves within these big organizations to put together these great products and services for them. So I think trust is a massive, massive part of that. So I'd love to hear some of your stories and share advice. I'm sure if we share challenges, there'll be some advice around the table as well. But Connie, let's go to you with, so I guess to give everyone some background with Nurture, which has been running a year or two now?
6 years. 6 years in the UK. So, I mean, yeah, it's our startup program, but really where it came from is, especially earlier, like years and years ago, who was kind of disrupting the industry, it was like Deliveroo, Uber, now most recently it's like Gorillas, GoPuff and stuff, and they come out of nowhere, and within 5 years, actually, huge companies and also huge spenders for out of home. So I guess for us it was, really what's in it for us, how can we tap into these brands early on, build a direct relationship with them, we always speak to the founders or the head of marketing or the directors, and kind of introduce them to out of home when they normally think, oh, this is not for us, we can't afford it, etc. So we built, I think what was really important, we built a program really looking at, if I'm a founder, what do I not know about out of home and what are the things I don't have expertise in, and really kind of build a program around that to support them quite genuinely. So there isn't like a catch, which I think they always look for, and the way we support is really in 4 things to give you an overview. It's like the creative, so support them in how do you do creative for out of home. It's all about grabbing attention, especially in London, it's so busy, the space. The second one is really more the planning, kind of giving them access to our data sets, YouGov, like a kind of out of home planning tools, which they kind of know their internal data, they don't have access to those data sets, and we give that to them for free, just learning how to reach their customer or audience better. Third one, and that's the big one, is investor matching. So we match their media spend with us, so really is essentially a 50% discount, which is huge, and we don't take equity, and we do that for a 12-month period for all of their campaigns, any size of campaign, which ranges hugely depending on which sector it is, from like 25k to like 400, 500. And then lastly is obviously, things like that, is over 6 years we've built a big community of kind of other businesses who also work with SMEs, networks where we say, right, where can we introduce these businesses to other players? Normally just very open referrals, like quite genuine, that's what we found really works, that maybe a business is looking for investment and we refer them to a VC, and they don't spend out of home, but a year later they come back and ask and say, obviously you helped us out when there wasn't anything in it for you. So I think, building really like what do they need, and then we try to build that, and we keep evolving it as we realise founders need more help on, funding. We really try to build that side to just make some introductions, open some doors so we can. And we also now are in the US, so we have the same program in the US, Australia, and then loads of European markets like Germany, France, Netherlands, etc. as well, and kind of keep growing it.
I think a big part of that, and what you're saying as well, is actually becoming the humans behind the brand. So I think, from what we've seen as well, to a founder, when they see Twitter, it's quite daunting. Particularly if you're thinking they're a founder based out of Hull or Norwich or wherever it is, and they're thinking of the big Twitter office in London. I guess it's how do you become that face, that human behind it. Is that something you guys have struggled with a little bit?
Certainly, I think in maybe first contact, just because exactly that, they assume that they have to have huge budgets, or they don't know how to make creative for the platform, they have nothing to say, or I don't want to tweet, I ate a sandwich. So yeah, I think being a human, having no catch, I'll take meetings with no strings attached, and just have a conversation maybe with a couple of different brands in category at the same time, whether not, I don't need them to share information, but just showing what's possible. And I think that focusing on Israeli fintech has helped also. Instead of trying to be pulled in a lot of different directions, I can be sort of a specialist in that for now, and then perhaps see what else is out there.
It's a very niche
Yeah.
place to start.
So interesting though.
I can imagine. And Thomas, how have you found it? So obviously you're effectively an alternative route of funding. So is that, it's not just the brand, it's actually educating on a whole new arm.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt, very competitive space right now. I think what is quite nice is that others are now shouldering the burden of educating the market. I think that with any financial services product, trust of course is the absolute central to any relationship, and that's why I think partnerships are so important, because you can only get so far. I think of course there'll be a lot of inbound, but it really does take time to build up that trust. And I think if you're working with another financial partner, I'll give you an example. At an old firm of mine, another fintech, Barclays Bank was our largest investor, and indeed also a key strategic partner. And even with that stamp of approval, people were still very, very skeptical. And I think that happens again also when you've got slightly newer financial products. I mean, really, what is revenue-based financing? It's a merchant capital advance. It has been around for many years. It's just as soon as you start telling people there aren't fixed repayments, it's a revenue share. Yeah, you start thinking, I don't know, this seems too good to be true. We're also not taking a personal guarantee. Now, I think given all of the, we've had 2 years of government lending schemes, bounce back loan, coronavirus business interruption loan scheme, and even the recovery loan scheme. I think people have maybe become used to that. They now think they can get hold of some sort of unsecured finance. So that presents perhaps an opportunity for us. But yeah, I think partnerships is absolutely central to building that trust, because otherwise I just think it's an uphill struggle.
And what does that look like for you though? What are you doing in these partnerships actually?
Yeah, no. I think the way that we look at this is probably it's in two parts. So it's with larger platforms, the likes of Twitter and Google and others. And then what I actually have focused more on here in the UK and across Europe is with when we launched this product, many thought of it as a challenge to venture capital. It's not, because ultimately we're not taking equity in the business. It actually becomes complementary. And so work very closely with, I would say, all providers of equity financing, whether that's accelerators, venture capital firms, private equity firms. But also actually we work a lot with aggregators, for example, corporate finance advisory firms, even brokers and other accountants. It's all those people that are entrenched in basically the finances of a lot of these founders. And more often than not, they don't have the time. I think any founder, when they wake up in the morning, they're not saying, I need revenue-based financing. They're thinking, I have a problem, I need to solve it, I just need to plug the gap. And so it's how we can actually present ourselves in a way that can support the business. And I say this a lot. I think for us, we're trying to be this long-term, sustainable partner for our founders. It's not just about deploying capital as quickly as possible. It's trying to work with them as early as we can for as long as possible. And again, for me, big focus is ensuring that there's the value add. As a venture firm, you'd be talking about helping with talent, helping with equity raises. Again, that's what we're trying to do here. Ensure that you come into our network. We can get you to, let's say, your Series A metrics, and then we'll also help you with, the raise. It might be that you want to expand into North America. I mean, that's one of the benefits, of course, being a North American company compared to a lot of our European counterparts. But yeah, that's really, I'd say, what we're trying to focus on.
Yeah, very cool. And I know you guys have had a similar challenge, haven't you? And you sort of mentioned it there, where I guess a lot of founders get caught up with the high street banks, and if they personally bank with them, then that's maybe who they should look to. So I guess it's that education piece again.
Yeah, so I mean, it's the savings part of, I'll let obviously Rebecca cover the funding and lending part, but the savings part is it's so difficult, because a lot of what you guys are saying around they don't wake up in the morning and think that this is the thing they want. So they are holding capital, and it's sat in an account potentially being charged. So they're charged to hold that capital, and they just don't even think about it. These are experts in what they do. They are not experts in running a business. They don't have that training. So they don't even think about savings. And I mean, even the language they use, they never use business savings, because the capital is working. It's not a savings is languishing almost. So even trying to get the language right to speak to small businesses and SMEs and founders, it's really, really challenging. And we use all the typical marketing techniques. We are a digital bank, so we have not got a high street presence. So almost people have to find us. So the search volumes in the month for business savings are basically on the floor. Personals through the roof, business on the floor. So we don't even have an active group. So all the words that you guys are using about creating the partnerships, creating the trust, being in those spaces, and I mentioned the FSB partnership earlier. It is about putting ourselves in that space and going, guys, we can genuinely give you something back. We can take this pound and make it this, which is great about our product. We know we've got a proposition that works, but trying to get in there and explain to the guys there is no catch. You're already holding these funds, make them work, and obviously then have a relationship with Aldermore Bank that maybe will bring them into the ecosystem to help their other needs. But we started as well as a partnership with Cash Plus, so we work with Cash Plus Bank now as well, because again, the volume for business current accounts is huge. So from that perspective, that really serves both needs. And I think somebody mentioned about ease and that relationship piece. The challenge we hear a lot is, if I don't keep all of my money with the high street, I will probably be penalised. They think there's this thing. So the idea of moving some savings out into a challenger savings and leaving, their current account with the HSBC or that worries them. They're like, we have to keep with one. It's the only way to get the best thing. It's like, it's not. It's not. But we've got a massive education piece to do.
Yeah, there's not much to add to that. I echo what you were saying as well about trusted partner and trying to get across the different benefits of specialist finance. And I think, as I say, a lot of SMEs, or we know a lot of SMEs do, because of simplicity, go to their main big bank. And we again are looking at working with different sectors and partnerships, like the NFB in construction. It's all about understanding what that problem is, what that need is, and trying to address it, and then actually getting to know the business. And then it is, our customers stay with us a long time once they understand the different products available. And then the biggest challenges, I suppose, is the talking about the other products and the savings and things like that are available as well. So, yeah.
I think a big part of it is that genuinely understanding their challenges, as a few people have alluded to. And for us, the only way to do that is to physically talk to them. I think it's so easy for big brands to. I think a couple of the issues they have is one, they sometimes shoehorn people into the SME role and they don't have any real interest or aren't particularly inspired by it, and we feel like that is just a massive mistake. I think you have to be so invested into this scale-up world. So I think that's important. The other thing is our job titles as well. So we talk to people all day from big brands who have these big EMEA job titles, and again, they're talking to someone that's very regional, somewhere in the UK, and it's, again, how do you align that? How do you have that conversation? So, and I think that comes down to how your business as a whole is looking at the SME arm as well. So I don't know if anyone's got any insight on that as to how the wider company views the SME arm within their companies. So obviously you know that.
It's a story of my life. Every week you have to, knock on the door, like, don't forget about the rest of the regions. It's only 60% of the world after all. But no, I mean, we had to put together a localization strategy because everything else has to be, there you go, same business with everyone, where we have to put design resources, making sure that all the SMB marketing team was part of the brief, or we had part of the rebrand, or so that we can actually reflect the voices of the regions in a global guide or content or design or whatever campaign. So that was one thing. And then we created what we call a campaign or a program in a box, so where we have access to templates and again self-serve resources that we can create ourselves to actually be faster in our markets and reflect the local nuances. So we had to put an entire localization team for translations as well. Sometimes it gets lost in you guys can translate, but that translation is not localization. It's very, very different. So now we had to put a whole strategy and a whole team together and request for headcount just to be not an international company but a global company.
It might be as offensive, right? You're launching in a new market, you're on someone else's turf, and you're not even prepared to speak their own language.
Yes.
And it's remarkable just how often you see this happening, time and time again. It's interesting because I mean, we don't operate in France, for example, but I know that in France, for example, you cannot, certainly with financial services products, you cannot advertise in English. You have to advertise in the local language. But yeah, I completely agree. It's funny, I think international expansion, I think to many it's super sexy and everyone wants to be involved in some way in that. But it's very, very, I mean, I think intellectually it's one of the more interesting roles you can take on, because you have to operate within the nuances of a market, and adapt your strategy accordingly. But it's really, really hard work, and I think people like to start that process, but the part that's not so fun is actually trying to maintain that and really win in those markets, because you are ultimately, however big you are, you're an outsider. And the startup world is littered with examples of businesses that have failed in that regard. I mean, even if you just look at the likes of N26, Monzo, both pulled out of the US. I mean, Uber in China is a great example. There are many. It's hard, and I think when you have lots of capital. I mean, we're operating in a new environment again, but I think when you have lots of capital at your disposal, you're like, yeah, the world's my oyster. I'm just gonna keep going. But absolutely hear you on that, and I think
so you're feeling the other side of that in effect, having been a US company launching.
It's really. I mean, I've said I've seen this before more on the advisory side, but actually seeing that in person, I think it's been a really, really interesting, because there's a big sort of change management element to that as well, because you have a business that's so set in its ways, and they've seen success. And again, like the US in many respects is, it's a huge market and it's completely uniform, whereas Europe, I actually think it's wonderful, is the fact that you have all of these nuances to all of these markets. You have to work out how you're operating. And I think for some people, they like the idea, but actually when it comes down to, and then don't get me started, GDPR and all that, I mean, just blows people's minds.
Yeah. When they start calling Europe, when they say they start calling Europe.
Yeah.
Just 8 countries.
We're actually looking at launching the US, and I kind of disagree that the US is uniform, because there's so many distinct characters across the different East and West Coast, and the pace of life, and even the language that you use. So we work with MasterCard, that's our scheme. But if you say we're running a scheme in America, that sounds like a scam. So you start seeing people say, oh, with the scheme last time, they're like, with the scheme? And so there is all that kind of adjustment. But I think language is so important. Like we actually ran, you mentioned fancy titles, but we ran a project called What We Call Things, because I came from a journalist background, and when I arrived in business 3.5 years ago, there were acronyms everywhere, nothing made sense, they were all there were words for words that didn't make sense, so we started just writing down anything that doesn't actually just mean what it means, like to a normal person. Because working with SMEs or with anyone, finance is super exclusive, so it's kind of built in the 90s to be kind of for them, just to be like, we're here, we'll look after your money, you pay us, we'll look after your money, but you don't really need to understand it. So I think language is like super important, and we've just got a list of all the words that make sense, and then words next to them that do make sense now. And I think as well, mention like partners and like language, so ambassadors. So we've got key people in different industries that tell us, like rather than us guessing, like what people in film and TV production, what time of year they want to speak to us, what time of year they look at their cash flow management stuff. We actually have, we're building it out now, but we have people in each industry that actually speak to us in the language, so they call it a rec or whatever. So rather than just us sitting in the marketing team being like, oh, I wonder what these people think that they might want to hear today, we actually sit with them once a quarter and get them to tell us what they want, and then we kind of speak more authentically. That's the trust element and like the authenticity piece.
That's a really fair point. I think a few of us have mentioned our language. You know, it almost feels like what we do is impenetrable. It's like your point, they have a problem, and that problem is bothering them. But where on earth do you go with this weird language? You know, and the people very often that come out to you, like exactly to your point, you know, they're global this, and you know, they're like, no, I'm not really interested in me. You know, and this time, and like your point, they never really realise. This is what we learned so much when we were talking to the businesses at the FSB. They're like, you know, we're so little, we just get stuck into what we do, and you know, we're just trying our best. That's the kind of language. It's like, and when they won the awards, they cried, you know, because they couldn't believe that someone had recognised them. And it's, I think that's a massive thing about the SME space, especially the S. I just think they just want to focus on what they can do and deliver their business, and they almost feel like they don't understand and nobody understands them. So your point about getting back to regions, really going micro level and understanding that business, using the right language, I think that's key.
Yeah, I think it's fine balance too. So what we find is, even when it comes to topics, when we're discussing with them fundraising or finance or team management, whatever, where it's clearly going to affect all of them think their problem is very, very niche to them. It's just their issue. So I think we've almost got to understand that and serve them in that way. But for me, I love when we're sat around a table like this, and actually there's those light bulb moments, a bit like you just had, Thomas, over there, where people realise, oh my God, I'm not the only one going through this. So I think it's actually matching them a little bit in that as well, I think is a massive thing. And just on where did you say you're launching in the States?
So with LA first, okay. We've got a federal license, but yeah, we were due to launch March 2020, I was actually going to America, and I was like, probably should go home. So we soft launched, and then we're kind of doing a relaunch this year.
Okay. Interesting. Why LA to start with?
So we've got a big film and TV presence, so when we initially launched with the first kind of expense management platform around, so we launched in 2007, so we were kind of an old fintech, but we work with kind of Netflix, Warner Brothers, Universal, so we've got quite a big kind of footprint there, and a lot of our UK customers, like their US entities, are kind of crying out for us to be there, so it's kind of we've got a bit of a kind of, bank to market there already, so we're going to go super precision focus, LA, film and TV only. I think the risk is really we are everything to everyone, and especially in the US, it's such a big market that we just get lost in the noise. So yeah, we're going to go quite niche to start with.
Yeah. Connie, what's your advice on that? Obviously, you're having to give advice to the nurture team that's launching out in the US. What are the do's and don'ts for them?
I mean, I think the do's are just do everything you can, meet everyone you can. Bit different, obviously. You know, you're very niche focused on that. We really want to capture as many as possible, really, very different industries. So I think when we get in a market, so we always have a local person, it started in the UK, but I think, to what you said, we always have in France the local person who knows that country and knows the audiences and stuff. But I think it's really, the starting is just building the network, because actually we are largely referral based or referral led through our partners. So my colleague who's just starting Nurture in the US, she's just, she went to your kind of meeting that you had out there, your launch meeting.
Session there.
Exactly, yeah, but she's meeting a lot of trying to get VC meetings, with, I guess, brands like you to see, can we partner up? She's meeting kind of all the startups that she can speak to, very open in the beginning what stage, because for us, I think a lot of you say you deal with small and medium sized, but for us, obviously, out of home requires a certain amount of capital. So at the beginning, I think we go very, very broad, and then slowly find a bit which are really the brands so we can make an impact, because realistically, there's a certain kind of stage.
I think that's such an interesting point as well. We talk about this a lot, where we talk to big brands that are interested in working with scale-ups, and they throw SME all into one bucket.
Yeah.
And in the US, it's everyone under 500 employees here, everyone under 250. So a one-man band is very, very different to a 5-man company, to a 50, to a 100 company, and so on. So I guess it's, how do you know who you should be targeting, and therefore how you talk to them? And what do you focus on? Is it team size? Is it revenue? Is it funding? So I don't know if anyone wants to share their experience of actually nailing that down within their own businesses. I'm sure that's
Yeah,
a conversation.
I mean, for what we do, the main point is that they have to have a transactional website. So that cuts out quite a lot of SMEs before they're ready to trade online. We wouldn't be able to offer them anything. So that's the kind of first distinction that we would go with. But my job in terms of the impact is to connect the SMEs or any brand realistically with partners of ours to really support them in leveraging our technology. So we're a SaaS platform, you can just plug and play, it automates a lot, but for a lot of the SMEs that we speak to, they kind of say, yeah, I've heard of influencer marketing, but I just don't have the time to do it myself. And am I going to have to send loads of free products out? Am I going to have to, be going out to these events? Am I going to have to help people shoot content? It's not for me. And so we kind of say, well, look, you can either use it yourself, and here's what you can do to automate some of that workflow, or let me introduce you to an agency, or let me introduce you to an MMP, let me introduce you to someone else within our ecosystem, and we'll come together with a joint proposition to really help you access this new customer acquisition channel, because it is a lot if you've not done it before. And if you are focused on, the kind of bread and butter of your business, if you've come to this, if you founded this company because you really care passionately about X, and suddenly you're having to learn Y in order to teach more people about X, and that's quite daunting, and it's really difficult then to kind of understand why you should invest your time in it. So for me, it's not so much about kind of what defines the SME as being of interest to us. It's how can I educate and enable you to make the most of this channel. And I think that's where the whole partnerships thing is so integral for us, because we enable brands to build partnerships, but we are also trying to sit at the kind of centre of having partners, and that's way too many mentions of the word partner in one sentence. So I always think my job is like Inception, because I'm literally talking to people about why you should have partnerships, and then I'm trying to create a partnership with them. It's just a bit much, but yeah, to answer your question, it's more just about who's got a transactional website, because if and it can be anything, could be products, services, could be lead generation. We've got integrations with HubSpot and Salesforce, so it can be B2B, can be B2C, but it's that point. There has to be an action. There has to be something that you're kind of creating as an action point on the website.
It's a nice way to simplify it.
Yeah.
From a marketing perspective as well, we're driven now to only do stuff that's trackable, because we need to prove ROI. Influence marketing out of home. I'm having these kind of conversations at the moment with our exec, and they feel like luxuries. And I think everyone has a challenge with data. I don't know. I hope it's not just me, but we work with legacy systems. We're trying to huddle our products into HubSpot. We don't charge for our products, so they're all kind of transaction-based and merchant side. So we can't measure kind of. It's really difficult to measure ROI, but things that you guys mentioned, they feel like luxuries, but they actually tend to have more impact than things you can measure. But we're driven not to do things that you can't measure because you can't prove ROI. So it's like this endless cycle of how you justify those kinds of like projects when resources tight.
And how do you step up the metrics? That's something that we often get, because an SME might say to us, I understand working with paid search, and I can see it, I can buy it, I can get a report on it, I can use an analytics platform. It's really easy for me to understand.
Yeah.
But if I then try and suggest, actually with influencer marketing, you can measure it, but you're looking at softer metrics. You're looking at, dwell time. You're looking at time spent on posts. You're looking at likes, sentiment of comments. And these are all things that we've built technology to track. But if the person that you're speaking to isn't speaking that language already, that's quite a leap from, I bought this ad, I saw that someone then bought this product.
It's also because our CEO is a former accountant, and he really cares about growth of business, but it's encouraging him to understand that things like share of voice. To him, he's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything.
That's a big
one. Yeah, exactly. So that's a massive education piece. I think it's just like banging the drum. And there's an amazing person called Sharma Hyder, who is a speaker at Sample by Sample. She talks about like lies that all marketers believe and these kind of metrics-based things, and she gets really good at teaching you how to kind of coach the revenue-driven kind of elements of your business and how these softer metrics actually create more impact. It just takes a bit longer, and it's harder to directly attribute it. But
you know what? There's a brilliant book for that. Pages.
Really?
Yeah, if you want to recommend it to your boss, it's the long and the short of it.
I'm going to write that down.
The long and the short of it. There's two writers. The first one is Les, L-E-S, and then his last name is B-I-N-E-T. I forgot the second one, but that is the absolute expert on why you need to have brand awareness always on. Different KPIs measured over 12 months at the least. And then you have this punctual lead gen campaign that are more like ROI, return on ad spend. Yeah. And what you have to, they have to run alongside to see results, but one is measured over a longer period of time, the other one is 3 months depending on your sales cycle. But that book is, you don't have to burn the whole thing, just read the summary and read the long and the short of it. Absolutely brilliant.
We will mention trust. If you're constantly just being like, buy my thing, which is what most of our revenue-driven campaigns are, you have to actually be like, here's the thing, here's another thing, here's another thing. Do you want to buy this thing? It's like you can't just be like constantly trying to do transactions with customers. So they just believe you.
So I mean, the other thing with that is it's not just trust, but it's how they value time as well. So we find this a lot with founders, that actually when new products are coming out to them, even though they know they might be better, they might be the next big thing, it's actually the time to try it out. So we hear a lot of brands talking about, we'll do a free trial. And then they're confused about why that's not really settling in and working with the founders. They just don't have the time to try the trial. So again, I guess it comes back to our relationships, that you have to have those conversations and deeply understand the challenges before you even get to the idea of a free trial or whatever it may be. I mean, the other thing that it comes down to as well, and kind of what I was getting at with when we're looking at what level of scale that we should be looking at for each of the businesses, is actually who within the business we should be talking to. So if you're targeting the marketing person of a scale up, when they're pre-seed, that is the founder. When they understand marketing or not, that is the founder. When they've got a bit of money, maybe they've done their seed round, they'll probably have a junior person who will execute on most things, but isn't really making the decisions. So it's kind of understanding that as well, that then when they're Series A, Series B, they might bring in a manager or a head of marketing, and then it changes things. So I guess, again, it comes down to deeply understanding that, so you know who you should even be talking to within the business. And how, exactly. So I'm not sure if anyone's had any experiences with that, whether they've got it wrong talking to the wrong person within the business, or how they managed to nail down finding the right person within the business.
I think we have to talk to multiple at the same time, because the person who's actually going to be utilising our platform is not the decision maker, but we need to be able to support that person in championing the product to their decision maker, because if we go straight to them, they're going to go, I've heard of that, but honestly, like, we don't really have time, and I need to be more kind of metrics based, or it's just not an area of focus for us right now. So we quite often do a dual approach where we kind of educate, inspire, enable the person that's going to be using the technology. And then when we speak to the founder, it's more usually about efficiencies. So how can we save you money from what you're currently doing by making it quicker, by automating it? And then with the person that's your kind of go-to day to day, it's imagine what you'd be able to do if you weren't spending so much time on these manual tasks. So instead of you combing through Instagram, finding individual influencers to speak to and reaching out to them through the app, imagine if you could just use us like Google, put in your criteria, and then automatically recruit those influencers. That's only really interesting to the person that's doing the day-to-day. All the boss needs to know is that you're going to be automating and scaling like that.
Who do you start with then?
I would start with the junior, but my role is slightly different because I'm not in the sales team. I'm more in the partnership space. So it's much more enablement focused role. And then someone in the sales team might then be going to the decision maker and having that conversation with them. So we all kind of pull in the same direction.
I think as well that if you think about what you've just described and trying to convince our sort of boards, CEOs, etc., to allow us to do this, that initial conversation, that initial sort of reach out phase to an SME, it is heavily resource intensive. You need to do a lot. You described there about the junior plus the founder, neither one really understanding, so then a lot of education, several interactions, not based on starting at the sales thing. It's a lot of work that potentially, in many cases, will come to nothing. So that's, or maybe it will come to nothing, but a long way down the line. So I think as well from the point of view, the way we are set up, within the savings team at Altenborg, we haven't got enough. We're a lean business. We're a very lean part of our business. And we have not got the bods, the physical resource to be able to go after one lead with that level of intensity. So I think there's an element as well of trying to find efficiencies in how you go after them. That I don't know. I don't feel I've cracked that.
I mean, another, shortcut to that is actually looking at people you already work with. So, so when we work with companies like Snapchat, for instance, they are really looking to create winning case studies where they can then talk about it from a top level point of view, whether it's the decision maker and a practitioner point of view. And they talk about that one, it almost works as an advert. So I think we've seen that work quite well, but the other thing is just getting to the right people.
Exactly. And that's the heart of your...
Yes, listening to your example, I can feel that happening to me within our organisation, and I can say, I won't say the name of the company, but they're doing it really, really well, and they're nearly getting there. So they probably started with me because in marketing, they sold the idea, I was completely bought into the idea, but they have also spoken to procurement, data, they have spoken to the tech strategy lead, so they're making my job a little bit easier. So I think this has been going on for sort of maybe 6 months, but and then there's me coming up and talking to all those people internally and saying what a great idea it is. And so they're already sort of half, 1 foot in the door, thinking actually, what? So that's the company doing it really, really well. And I think, I think you do have to talk to all those different stakeholders because even if a marketeer wants one of these, this technology, you have to go through so many hoops within a business. We're not huge, but within a business to try and get it through all these different stakeholders to get it approved. So
it's development time as well. Like for us, because we're a technology, the head of marketing could be jumping up and down saying, "This is exactly what I've been looking for," and then development will turn around and go, "Yeah, but we're stacked. We're stacked until like June next year. There's just no time." So we kind of anticipated that this was something that was going to be not just a challenge for us now, but a huge challenge for us as we grow and scale throughout Europe, to your point earlier. So what we started doing is partnering with e-commerce platforms. So we're reaching the SMEs at that point that they have just built the website and they're starting to think about how they're going to optimize it. So by having that kind of plug-in, that drag and drop, we're saving them development time, we're then saving that head of marketing going, oh, actually, I can just buy it through the App Store. Okay, done. and then you're kind of past that gatekeeper. So again, thinking about like what stage you need to be talking to them at as well.
Yeah, I think that's quite important. The growth stage, aligning your marketing or your programs to these stages. Like if you're talking to like a pizza shop owner, it's like a 1 man or 2 man band. Very different challenges than the SME, for example. So for us, we've aligned. We have customer insights and then other insight we're getting from the sales team that feeds into our campaigns. And we've broken down like if you're 1 to 10 employees, this is what we notice the patterns in the strategy that you have. So we're targeting our messages to you guys. And then 50, 100, and 100 to 500. So you have very different approaches for those 3 different stages.
Yeah, and I think for us, one thing that we learned fairly early on was to focus on the funding round rather than team size or revenue. I think a couple of things that we almost got caught out with early on was that particularly if you're looking at tech businesses and particularly within that med tech, if you're looking at revenue, they may not have made any revenue for a couple of years and it may not be on the horizon for the next year or so. But actually they've raised 10 or so million in funding, they've got a team of 50, and they're a fully functioning business. And I think what we found is actually when you're focused on those funding rounds, if they go through their Series A, just the level of change in the business where they go from a scrappy startup to actually they need a new website, they need to recruit 20 new people, they need to, suddenly the business completely changes, and that is massively overwhelming to the founders. They've got to suddenly make it all happen. So that's one thing that we're definitely really focused on. So when partners come to us and say, we're really focused on this amount of revenue or this number of staff or whatever it may be, we try to steer them away from that, just to think more broadly, and that for us helps put it into buckets a little bit easier. So I definitely want to consider.
And don't call them SMEs because people don't know what an SME is.
I was going to say, a lot
What
of
are you talking about?
I was thinking that when you were speaking, when we were talking about it, a lot of scale-ups say, well, do we follow that or not? We don't know what that is. And it's, to be honest, it's the same with funding rounds. A lot of them are like, well, we're raising this amount of money, this is what we want to do with it. Put whatever label you want on it. It doesn't really affect us that much. So it feels like everyone outside of the world and everyone on the perimeter of it is putting these labels on it for them. But I think, as many of us have said, they just don't think about it that way. So I think really important to note. And just on that, we are just about out of time. I think absolutely flown by. I think we've covered a fair bit. But I think for us, this is certainly not what we do day to day, but we love hosting these sessions, as I say, for a bit of an event, share some challenges and some advice and whatever else. I'm hoping you all found it useful this morning.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank
Of
you.
course. Thank you. Thanks for coming out. Still plenty of food as well.